Eastern Promises is basically about the Russian mob in London, which was a subject that was fairly obscure when we started shooting, but by the time we were halfway through it, it was, as I like to say, radioactively hot, since there was a poisoning of a Russian former KGB agent that happened very close to where we were shooting the movie.
One is very, very aware in recent years of a migration from Russia of all sorts of wonderful people and less wonderful people, extremely dangerous people.
She was 14 when he raped her. You bastards murdered her.
Well, Zakonia are thieves, and the thieves have a code of behavior, you know. There are certain unwritten rules of behavior that if you violate them, you're out, and maybe you're dead.
Live only by stealing, by theft. In Russian, it's vory, and code in Russian is zakon. Therefore, we are thieves by the code.
To be a thief in law, you need to have had professional criminal experience, a significant amount. You need to have a few prison terms at least.
Питерских крестах сидел, дюжина ходов сидел.
You don't steal from other thieves if you don't lie to other thieves, and you don't misrepresent who you are, and if you can take a beating, you're probably going to be all right.
You never know who they are. The secret about this Russian mafia, they are not visible. And you never can really point, oh yeah, he did this murder thing with Lit. They disappear.
My friend says his uncle owns the restaurant where you can sing. He is sure this man will take care of me.
The BBC wanted something about Eastern European prostitutes in London, but I wanted to take a conventional English person and lead her into that world.
I think everyone is very aware of this traffic that goes on of young girls from Russia, well, from all over, actually. It's a disgusting traffic.
It's everywhere, actually. It's in London, it's in Paris, it's in Moscow. Prostitution is the oldest job in the world.
It's an invisible trade. The girls who are trafficked are very rarely seen. They're kept behind closed doors. They're kept as slaves, effectively. So there is this sort of slavery within modern London, which is quite shocking.
Tell him what I said.
There is nothing to tell. Slaves give birth to slaves.
For trafficking heroin, someone will get 40 years. For trafficking 100 human beings, they'll get 6 months to a year. It's not considered to be the big crime because, first of all, they can always allege that it was all done voluntarily. And also the girls will very rarely give evidence. So it's much more lucrative and less dangerous to traffic people than it is to traffic heroin.
How can you keep doing what you're doing?
I'm just a driver. I told you this. You cannot do deals with those people.
Anna enters into this world of absolute intrigue, and she doesn't know the depth of danger to begin with. I mean, they appear to be so friendly, these people.
She gradually meets all of us and is appropriately freaked out by you know, the vibe we give off, I suppose.
Where have you taken Christine? Tell me, you bastard! You've taken her! Tell me!
Wait.
Huh? That's good. You can't slot in 20 actresses into this kind of role. There are emotional subtleties, there are linguistic subtleties, sociological subtleties involved with this character, and she has to be convincing also as a midwife. That's a key point in the narrative. Naomi was just first on our list. I mean, everybody felt this woman is the perfect actress for this role. We felt that she and Viggo would have huge chemistry together, which is interesting because it's not really a love story in the traditional sense. I mean, they don't get together in the movie. And I think that's unusual, and it's one of the things that was interesting about the script, is that they're like ships that pass in the night, you know? They're connected, but then they're not connected.
До свидания, Anna Ivanovna.
That's for them. With someone like David, you don't really panic too much because he's an auteur. He knows what he's doing, and I would never have signed on if I didn't believe, and he just sort of instilled me with confidence.
He's flexible, but at the same time very sure of himself. Maybe that's why it's flexible. But that's a nice person to work with.
I seem to be drawn to kind of enclosed, hermetically sealed subcultures, whether they're ones that I've invented myself in sci-fi terms, or things like M. Butterfly, which was the Peking opera. And this is not only Russian culture transplanted to England, but mob culture, which is a subculture of a subculture. I think it's my existentialist underpinnings that draw me to that, the idea that we create our own reality through our culture and our art. We create a reality that seems as real as anything else, but in fact is quite transitory and is really a projection of our own creative will. What? And so too it is with this crime family that we discover in Eastern Promises.
That's right, right.
One of the characters who owns the restaurant is based on a real person who I've met, who was charming, elegant, well-read, and also a trafficker, who I'm not going to name because it would be dangerous. It's a moment that I try to put into the film where you're in a situation where you think, oh, this is an interesting person. He reads Pushkin and he's quite literate. And then his friends arrive and you start thinking, oh, right. That's who he is. You're beguiled by a situation, and then you start to realise, actually, this is all part of a larger picture. In the world of trafficking and gangsterism and all of that.
In this business, sometimes the biggest danger comes from the most stupid things. There's a certain tradition to play a kind of mafia boss, like Marlon Brando did it, like Al Pacino did it. And I'm trying to find a way to make my own way. It's not easy if there's a tradition to play certain parts. I hope it will work. I'm not quite sure. You never know.
You belong in there with nice people. Stay away from people like me.
Getting ready is one of the parts of making movies that I like the most. That's where you really learn a lot.
Viggo's method is not the method. He's not a method actor in the strict sense, but he does do a lot of research.
I feel like I'd at least done my best in terms of getting ready to play the part. I knew that I had to go to Russia, where Nikolai's meant to be from, which is a couple time zones east of, Moscow, St. Petersburg, and the Urals area, and Yekaterinburg, which is far, far away from Western Europe, and it feels quite different.
Doing that really without specific contacts, he would just meet people, somehow they'd communicate, and he would absorb them, absorb their Russianness.
He really spent a lot of time with a lot of very disreputable Russian people and came back with this character. I write the lines, but the character, the heart and soul of it is really from him.
I met some people who actually are people like Nikolai or like his associates. They didn't tell me that much, but they just sort of gave me an idea of what certain things meant and what things would be authentic. And if we're doing a certain kind of scene, even if it might not happen exactly like that, the idea, the spirit of it was right.
I get this line. I work with a lot of Russians, and Viggo has nailed it perfectly. Just the way he walks, the way he talks, the way he moves his head, it's totally Russian.
Азимов племяш перерезал Сойке глотку. Кирилл заказал его. Закрой свой рот. Отец все равно это узнал.
There's a couple scenes that are just in Russian. One short one that's in Russian and Ukrainian, and then another one in which I'm interviewed by some Russian or Slavic, underworld types. It just makes you feel, I think, as an audience, hopefully, that you're eavesdropping, you're glimpsing another world, there's another feeling. And it helps you as an actor, too, to believe what you're doing.
Every movie has knots that have to be untied, and this was one of the ones for us, was the language question. So what do? Do you cast English-speaking actors who will then do a Russian accent, as in fact we were doing with Viggo? And I felt that it would be a lot more interesting to look for European actors who could do a Russian accent, who could speak English. Armin is German. Vincent is French. Jerzy Skolomovsky, who is better known perhaps as a director, he speaks Russian, but with a Polish accent. So we had to draw all these disparate versions of Russianness together that would be believable, really, to a Russian audience. And it seems to work.
Давай с нами в business.
This movie will be reminiscent, it'll seem like, in some ways, a logical follow-up to History of Violence. The question of, is violence ever justified? Is lying ever justified?
I am driver, that's it.
Was cruelty unavoidable in some cases? Can violence be a force of good? As usual, David doesn't really answer that. He asks a lot of questions and you're stuck thinking for yourself.
My desire always is to make a really complex, textured film that you can see many times and that will stay with you and will not just be a consumer item that's gone 2 hours after you've seen it. That's the only way I can evaluate it. And I think I've achieved that with Eastern Promises, but that's as far as I can go. There was a reference to tattooing in Steve's original script, but it wasn't a major sort of metaphorical pivot point of the movie at that point. Viggo Mortensen, who really is an incredible researcher, sent me a book about the idea that in Russian prisons, you don't exist if you don't have tattoos. Your whole life story is written on your body, your criminal history, everything about you. And you're not trusted if you don't have these tattoos that can be read by people in prison, and so they can see who you are, what you are. This book, plus a documentary called The Mark of Cain on Russian prisons and the tattooing that goes on in the prisons, really altered our perception of what the movie was. And in the rewrites that Steve did with me, suddenly the tattoos really crystallized a lot that had been kind of there almost in the script, but not quite.
The tattoo element of the film is based on the reality of an organisation called the Vorvi Sakoni, which is the Russian mafia. A very organised, very tight-knit group of people who express their rank and their history through tattoos.
And typical symbols for War of Zakoni, it's a stars. It's like if you're an officer or if you're a general, you have a certain star on your epaulette.
So you tell the Russian desk, you have seen stars over my heart.
If you want to put the star of the War of Zakoni on your chest without a permission, and I am War Zakoni, I will give an order to my people just to come to you, or I will do it myself with a knife and I will chop it off those pieces of a skin with those stars, because you do not deserve to have them.
Я вор от рождения. The star's a f***ing birthmark for me.
If you're a thief, you have a certain tattoo. If you've committed a murder, you have a certain tattoo. But it's much more complex than that. There's a whole language which is expressed through tattoos, and what I've tried to do is use that in the film.
Где по твоим напорюгам видно, что ты сидел в Сибири, и что ты был вором.
There's a scene I call it Interview with the Vampires, you know, when the criminal higher-ups, when they're asking these questions, the reason the man is sitting there in his underwear in front of these guys in suits, it's not just because it's David Cronenberg and he's going to make a weird scene, it's so that they can look at his tattoos. And if they want to question anything on his body, they can. And if there's any tattoo on your body that you can't answer for, you're in trouble.
Semyon recommends these places for business meeting because you can see what tattoos a man has.
There are people who have done studies of the whole language of it. They're mostly tattoos which are done in prison, and there are a couple of very good books about that. But again, Viggo spent a lot of time with people who live in this world, making sure that the tattoos that he had are dead right.
There's an attention to poetic language, to history, and a lot of religious motifs, but they most often don't really have a lot to do with religion. The crucifix that I have on my chest just denotes that I am a thief in good standing. It doesn't really have anything to do with Jesus, necessarily. The church on my back, the 3 domes represent 3 different prison sentences, you know. But that's something that those guys would see and know. Just like a spider, if it's climbing upwards, it means one thing. If it's climbing downwards, it means another thing. You're either continuing to be in crime or a certain kind of crime, or you've said, no, I'm not doing it anymore.
The designers on this film have done a fantastic job of getting everything exactly right. So when Viggo takes his shirt off, someone who really is a member of that organisation would be able to read what he's done.
Most of the phrases are either exactly or similar to ones I've seen or seen pictures of. There's one that says, "Let all I have lived be as if it were a dream." I wouldn't want to do it over again. It's kind of what it's saying, I suppose, but it's a beautiful way of expressing it. And then some are just amusing. On the instep of my right foot, it says, "Where are you going?" And on the other foot, it says, "You know, what do you care?" That's really funny. You know, it's like you don't even have respect. One foot doesn't even have respect for the other, you know. This was something we ended up doing a version of, you know, Stefan did something, this is something I sent to him. Basically, in Russian it says, "I wait." In other words, don't forget about me, no matter who you are.
It's not cluttered, but it's full. It's like a full life. We're saying it's your passport, it's your life, it's your tattoos, and we're carrying through on it.
It's not Rod Steiger.
And it's not Rod Steiger.
Right.
It's not
This could be a little bigger.
You can get creative, but at the same time, There is a very strict symbology involved. That is, the meanings of these tattoos is very clear. You can't be deceptive with them. You have to tell the truth about who you are.
These tattoos are transfers, basically. And they're applied with hot water. You just peel off the plastic, put it on the skin, and take a sponge with warm water, and you just put pressure on it, and then you lift the paper, and the transfer will stay there, because it's kind of like glue-based. And they're touched up with tattoo inks, Illustrator color, and H tattoo pens. What I do is I spray a little bit of flesh color makeup over them to make them look aged a little bit more and not so fresh.
Some of them look older than others.
So that's basically the procedure.
It takes a while to apply all these, so there's been times where I've just left them. You know, I've taken a bath and whatever, and then they're still there. Oh, great, okay. In a pub, there was one time where I was sitting there, and I overheard there was a couple speaking Russian. And I sort of, my ears perked up, and I was just trying to see if I could pick out anything they were saying, just, you know, for my own edification. I was listening for a while, and there was the odd word, and then I understood a couple things, what they were talking about, a little bit. And all of a sudden they stopped, like in a mid-sentence. And I looked around, and they were like looking at my hands, but like looking really spooked, you know? And I instantly felt really bad, like, oh, they must think I'm eavesdropping, which I was, I guess. And what kind of person was I? And I had just come from work, so my hair was like this, like it is now, and I probably looked scary to them. On the one hand, I thought, well, good, we were on the right track. On the other, I felt really bad, you know, so I've sort of, you know, like when we finish this now, I will definitely wash them off.